Mario Kart and Barry Allen. The heroism of the true Barry Allen. We finally have a Flash movie for the first time ever. He's been in other movies, right? He was in Justice League, etc. But he finally has his own flick. And I feel like this film didn't really give a lot of thought to the ultimate, narrative meaning of what it's going to mean to have a time-traveling character who goes back and tries to stop a tragedy in their own life. If you know this is an action-adventure story, it's a superhero story, right? So it's sort of mythic archetype type stuff. And you know that this character is imbued with the powers to travel so fast they can theoretically go back in time. And in straight into the Goomba. And in the narrative arc of Zack's Justice League, you already had him go back in time, at least 30 seconds, a few minutes. So we've already established in canon in this filmic universe that he definitely can go back in time. So if that's the case and your character is haunted by a terrible past, of course, the first thing they're going to do, if they didn't, it didn't occur to them before that maybe they could travel back in time, now they're going to have to. Because their mother died horribly and their father was, convicted of a crime he didn't commit. It ruined the family. Of course, Flash is going to have to go back in time. So, given that, that constraint's on your film. And clearly the studio and everyone else was like, oh, we'll do some version of Flashpoint. Because why? Essentially because it's one of the most important Flash stories, basically. So, given that, you really should pay Wow, that was quick. You really should spend some time thinking about, is it Back to the Future time travel? Is it Terminator time travel? Is it something else entirely? But also, we're probably at the end of this story going to reveal that, try as he might, Barry Allen cannot change the past. Not in the way he wants to. So if that's the case, we have to say to ourselves, what point are we making? What is the... Oh my God. I'm going to run you all over. It's just, what is the purpose behind that? Because at its heart, right, these mythic narrative adventure stories, especially about heroism and courage and pain and torment and tragedy and life, what are we trying to say about life for the audience? Because the audience can't go back in time. The audience just suffers tragedy and needs to figure out a way to deal with it. And if that's the case, then, what is this story about Flash? Who does have this novel ability to go back in time and possibly try to change it, but fails to be able to. What does that say about how we should deal with our own tragedy? How does that resonate with the audience that's being transformed by their experience of this narrative? And so, it probably should be some version of, terrible things happen, but perhaps there's good to be found in the wreckage. Or maybe, in Flash's case especially, what they could have done, and they didn't touch at all in this film, is they could have focused more on his arch-villain. They could have focused on Eobard Thawne and Reverse Flash, who, yes, might have a ridiculous name, but, whatever. And, come on. And focus on the villain. And, there are different versions of Eobard and why he hates Flash and what he does about it, but there is at least one version where it's kind of like he's from the future. He studied Barry Allen and was able to replicate the accident that gave Barry his powers and was able to give himself powers. And in that, he was able to go back in time. And in going back in time, he was able to, for whatever his motivation is, torment and torture Barry. He really is responsible for his mother's death and every bad thing that's ever happened to Barry. Is one version of the canon. So if you're going to do that, you could do and their fight with each other, Flash and Reverse Flash, is in at least that Jeff Johns version, is explaining away what was the lightning bolt that gave Barry his powers initially. And it's it's this cataclysmic super speed fight they're having through Central City. So if you want to do that, then we can explore the sort of deep mythic origins of his antagonism with his arch nemesis, and also big again, and also what it means to be a hero. Barry, maybe you can't change the past because your arch villain will, maybe controls the ability to travel through space-time more than you somehow because he's from the 25th century, And because of that and his ultimate incredible hatred for you, for whatever reason, he will never let you rest. He will always torture you. He will always go back in time and change what he can. And maybe the one main thing he can definitely change without destroying the cosmos or something is murder your mom and frame your dad. Like, and if that's the case, then you have to say to yourself, like, okay, what does that mean for Barry and his heroic journey? Maybe it comes down to some version of the reason Eobard hates you is because of your heroics, because you're part of the Justice League, because you keep helping and saving and using your powers for selfless good in some fashion. And because of that, I mean, you know, maybe saving somebody accidentally killed Eobard's family or something like that, right? You could make it causal. But if that's the case, finish! Oh, yeah. Man, these races are shorter than I thought. Maybe because of that, Eobard is always going to torture you, is always going to ruin your life. He's always going to be responsible for the major tragedies and terribleness. So if you go back in time and try to fix it, right, try to save your mom, then Eobard will go a fraction of a second before your fix and make it worse or make it different, or a fraction of a second after your fix and undo it. And so try as you might, you can spend the rest of your life trying to save your parents and stuff, and you just won't be able to. What happens if I hit these Goombas? Boom! Right? So then it's like, well, you can ruin your entire life, spending every lasting moment of your life trying to fix it, trying to stop this evil, this sort of force of nature from ruining, from ruining your life. Or you can go about living your life. And maybe that's it, right? Like the reason he can't change the past is more because there's this dynamical system of his arch villain continually just destroying it and ruining it. And there's no way to stop that. And therefore, the only way to really stop it would be to stop Eobard, which would be to not be a hero. And maybe not being a hero is not a choice Barry can make. To be imbued with this incredible power and then to sit by and watch tragedy happen, watch terrible things happen, knowing he could stop it. But to stop it would be to, kind of causally end his mother's life and throw his dad in jail, and he just won't do it. And so you could, at least one version of the moral question of the film could be, is that a path Barry would ever find acceptable, that his parents would find acceptable, that he could or could not do that? You know, maybe Act 1 has him save somebody who necessarily will die if he doesn't be the hero he normally is, right? If he doesn't act in heroic ways in the way that only the Flash could or can. And to do that would be to instigate Thawne and therefore cause the tragedy in his past. Like, right, I mean, Eobard is usually in charge of the reverse speed force, whereas Barry sort of generates the normal speed force. So you could anchor it to that cosmically, right? Like, you could anchor it to why is he able to go back in time easily, and like Barry can do it, but only it's really difficult or something. You have to limit his powers. It can't be. Otherwise, again, like, why is he not just stopping every bank robbery with time travel? But so these are moral questions about like heroism and Barry's journey and time travel specific type questions that the film just kind of skirts and just doesn't talk about. Like it does a little bit, right? Like by the end of the film, he goes, okay, I guess I have to set everything right and make my mom die and be sort of causally responsible. In that way, it's a little like Terminator. In that clearly she forgot the tomatoes because Flash removed them from her cart when she thought they were already there. And that's why her dad leaves. And then we still don't know. I mean, it's kind of set up like maybe Flash number 2 would demonstrate that like she died at the hands of Eobard Thawne. But as far as this film's concerned, she just gets randomly stabbed to death by someone or something. But the film doesn't deal with that, like the time travel element. It'd be weird to then copy it in number 2. We're doing more time travel stuff in a second one. Or we're going to wait until the third of the trilogy. Like, what was the eventual plan here? Like, I don't know. It just seems that a film that could have been about epic concerns of the moral good and a life lived well and the novelty of having a character who can travel through time and do things that normal people can't, and what that could do and say for the audience sitting there watching somebody possibly be able to get a do-over with their life. I mean, they're just such questions that are pretty unique to Flash and characters like Flash. Like, and then this film just didn't really treat it that serious. It didn't really consider it too deeply. It just did sort of a surface level idea of, okay, well, I guess he has to put it back the way it was because you can't change the past. Why? I don't know. It wasn't even a cosmic treadmill. It was a chrono bowl. Like, I don't know. It just messes things up. And, you know, the younger version of himself, it looks a little Savitar-esque to me almost, but like a weird, dark, twisted version. Like, oh, it'll just drive you insane. You just try as you might. There's never a version where you will be able to, like, you'll never be able to change history. So set it back, Barry, and let your mom die. It's like, it's emotional, sure. Oh my God. I'm getting destroyed over here. It's like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it did justice to the Barry Allen. Neither did this race. Second, trash. This film was primed for epic superhero type concerns. And I feel like we just didn't get it. Like they just didn't give it to us. Instead, they greenlit a film that had like some cool ideas and cameos, like Nick Cage Superman, and like that's cool. And like we got Michael Keaton Batman back, which everybody was super stoked for. And then we didn't do much with him. Like the character arc for Batman here is just like, hey, Gotham's saved and nice nowadays, so I just kind of hung it up. And then you reminded me that, you know what, I'm Batman more than I'm Bruce Wayne. Why did I give this up? You know, and Supergirl, like, oh, I guess humans were mean to me at first, and then you were nice with no reason to be. Thanks, Bear. Like, you know, it's like these are kind of weak sauce character arcs, especially for characters of such gravitas and importance. Like, especially we got Michael Keaton back, and this is what we did with him. Like, on the whole, I just feel like we didn't quite... Oh my gosh, I hit left and he turned right. Come on, Mario. Like, it just didn't feel like we did justice to any of the characters on screen. And it clearly felt like a story that was going to be more expensive to pull off. And instead, we spent like half the budget. And that's why everybody looks so crazy. Like the Speed Force vision, if we're going to be, generous and call it that, just looked not good. And you're just like, come on, man. Barry deserved better. The Flash deserved better.